Hey guys, it's your legal bestie, attorney Symone, and I am so sorry for the delay. I am still at the courthouse. It is 7 o'clock at night. I am still here. I have been doing back-to-back interviews. Let me know where you're watching from as you come on in. My throat, y'all, my eyes were all watering. I am so sorry. Also, wanted to let you know, hit that like, hit that subscribe as you come on in. We are almost at 75,000 subscribers. I would love to get to 80K before this verdict comes in, but come on in. Listen, so yesterday I did a live right after court, and it was along with my colleague. What I did though is I got the transcript and I did a short 20-minute video. I'm going to release it later tonight. I'll do that video where it summarizes the prosecution's closing arguments. You got to peep that. It's got the bombshells. It's not going to be boring. It's literally got the most important pieces that were shared by the prosecution yesterday that are really going to change the game. And then today, let me go ahead and put these on the screen. There you go. And then today, after this evening, when the transcript comes out, I'm going to do a similar summary for the defense. Now, I have to say this. Now that I've heard both sides, I'm going to say, now that I heard both sides, sorry, I'm not feeling good. Now that I heard both sides, my allergies are killing me. I have to say, I think that the prosecution did a really, really good job. They absolutely brought it home together. And honestly, what it sounded like with the defense is the defense was just throwing everything at the wall, excuse me, trying not to go to jail, including, I believe at this point, the defense's strategy is to try to find the one juror that's going to cause a mistrial because they don't believe that the government will retry this case. And I can't say that's a bad strategy because at this point, the facts and the way the government lined it all up. So I'm going to go through that. I'm going to go through what was shared by the defense and then the rebuttal today. We're going to do those highlights. But as a result, literally, it's like the defense is really just hoping that there's going to be a rogue juror who's just not going to follow the rules because the rules are so clear. We call that, y'all, we call it jury nullification, which means they got the instructions. They know what it says. They know good and well the facts say X, Y, or Z, and they still refuse to find guilty. So here's the big thing with the defense today with Marks. They try to paint everything as consensual, as toxic relationships, toxic love affair. And there's nothing to see here, guys. No big deal. Now, what was interesting is that he literally, Mark, I always say his last name wrong, so we'll call him Agnifilo. He says, he was like, he said, this relationship was it was a normal relationship. He says that this wasn't racketeering. This was it was the same. It was a normal relationship. It's got normal relationship stuff. There's jealousy, there's love, and that Cassie was just an angry woman and Jane was just an angry woman. Well, no, there's nothing normal about what we saw the two of them go through, right? But they tried to couch it as though it's normal. Nothing to see here. But what the government did yesterday was they clarified that with the trafficking count for Jane or for Cassie, you can find that they actually consented to freak offs 99 of the times. You only have to find one time that either Cassie or Jane was not agreeing, and therefore it was not consensual. Well, that's going to be a hard thing for the defense to do, and they really could not put up any explanation of how the hotel beatdown was consensual. Yes, they called it domestic violence, but the problem is that hotel beatdown actually satisfies the one incident of force. Remember, all they have to show is one incident that she didn't want to agree to. Well, the beatdown happened in the middle of a freak off. That's why it's not just simply domestic violence, because it happened during the middle of the freak off. The guy was sitting there butt naked on the bed and he dragged her back into the room. So what Mark would have needed to present is something that said, that freak off, that incident, that fight was one in which she consented to. And you can't do that. There's just no freaking way, right? In addition, this was crazy, y'all. Another element is the threats to release the X tapes. We only need one element of that. This was Mark's argument. Mark argues that the threats to the release the tapes, oh, that wasn't genuine. He says, oh, there's no way. Here we go. He said, oh, there's no way in God's green earth. Those were the words. No way in God's green earth that Diddy would really release X tapes. He's on them too. He's actually not. The tapes have him recording her and the guy that she's intimate with. And a lot of the times, Diddy will actually be zooming in on the man's body and what the man is doing according to, the tapes. Now, to say, oh, there's no way he would have released these sex tapes and therefore it's not a real threat, that's ridiculous. And it's irrelevant because it doesn't matter if the threat is real. Does Cassie believe it's a threat? And she clearly did. Hit that like as you come in. We only got 300 likes, guys. Says, I expected a verdict next week. I do too. So here's the thing. And as far as the threats not being real, didn't he blackmail her mother? He sure did. Didn't he blackmail her to the mother and demand $20K from the mom? And the mom actually mortgaged her house to get him the money. So therefore, it's more than just a threat. He actually went through it. It does not matter. It does not matter that he gave the family the money back days later. The threat was so real that the mother mortgaged her house. That's how you know it was a legitimate threat. That threat there could be sufficient. Hit that like as you come on in. They also stated the other part of the defense. It says, oh, well, yeah, the fact that they only need to have one incident that's not consensual. Oh my God, Nita J. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this super chat. It says, thanks for giving us the legal tea. Just a little something to help you while you're in New York. I really, really, really appreciate that. Yes. Okay. I was going to say, so now this was I get this defense. It said, Mark was saying, well, how does Diddy know which freak offs were and weren't consensual? How does he know that? Well, he would know it by things like if you know that if you're whooping on a woman to get her to return to the room and she's trying to leave, that is not consensual. So you don't need rocket science, Diddy, to find out which instances of this were and weren't. When the text messages are like, hey, let's do this. Of course, those things are consensual. Yeah. But when you got to beat someone to return them to a freak off, it's not consensual. And common sense rules there. Mark also then defined Jane. Remember, Jane, there's the issue of the financial coercion with Jane due to the $10,000 a month allowance. I told y'all that was going to be a problem. Well, with Jane, he said that the rent was merely a nice gesture. They made a deal and he simply kept his end of the deal. Remember, because the rent was supposed to be for 2 years. So let me go back to the comments. There we go. Because the rent was supposed to be for 2 years. Here we go. Let's see. Where did this go? I can't see it. Hold on a second. Thank you. Yeah, I think that argument may have turned off some jurors. And also with the rent being 2 years, I agree with him. It was a nice gesture. I think it is a stretch to find that to be a coercive event. And I also think by the looks of the jurors, they weren't necessarily buying that either. Now, as far as the prostitution across state lines, remember, this is one of the strongest ones where I was like, I don't know how they're going to get rid of this. Well, their number one excuse with the prostitution across state lines, y'all, was, oh, we weren't paying them for prostituting. We were paying them for their time. Listen, all escort services say that because that's how they try to get around the law. But at the end of the day, there was examples given by the male S workers that if they couldn't perform, they weren't paid and that they were paid a much lower amount if they were not completing it. What's my prediction? Okay, I'm going to give you my prediction just shortly. The other thing about the state lines, they said, oh, well, no, there's no proof that he crossed state lines because they only called 2 witnesses. Those are the 2 hookers. And those witnesses said they're not prostitutes. What prostitute is going to say they was a prostitute? I have a homegirl who's a hoe. She'll never tell nobody she's a hoe, but she's a hoe. She's a hoe. So here, no, they're calling themselves escorts because they want to be rehired. Yeah, and it don't matter what you call yourself. It's what do you do? So, for example, some of those guys were actually strippers, right? There were strippers that were hired. So they may not call themselves a prostitute because they by profession are strippers. But on that day, they were hookers because they got paid. They came over there and they did the do. The other thing is with respect to them saying, oh, well, there was only 2 guys that crossed state lines. And those 2 guys that took the stand, they never crossed state lines. That's not true. plus the prosecutor's receipts showed otherwise. They showed that, as well as they showed that different people were sent flights from LA to New York to Miami, all kind of stuff. Mark did a really good job with the facts that he had. Listen, I think what Mark definitely did is he put enough argument out there so that a person that doesn't want to convict Diddy has enough to repeat in the jury room and can try to use that to hang this jury or find him not guilty, whichever. But that's what Mark needed to do, honestly, is just give this person enough sound bites to repeat. Because what's a juror going to believe? Well, if a lawyer said it out there, then it must be right. If the lawyer said, oh, thank you so much for the additional super chat. Let's see, what do we got here? Oh, feel better, Symone. You've been a pleasure to watch. Thank you so much, Hibiscus Rose. And Cumberry, it says, Symone just lied because the Punisher said he wasn't performing and he still got called and paid. The performance, let me put this up. Here we go. The performers all got various rates and they all got paid. Let me see if I can put this up. Oh, here we are. Hold on. All right. Cambry says, thank you for paying $5 to call me a liar. They're saying I lied, that the Punisher said that he got paid even when he did not perform. No, specifically, he got paid a different amount if he didn't perform. And that was for his transportation. So I would disagree with you. But it says the performers all got various rates and they all got paid. They did get various rates. That's right. But even if they're getting paid for their time was to be spent doing it. And a lot of times he would make them do it multiple times. Diddy was not paying them. Okay, so here's the thing. If you're saying they're paid for their time and not to perform, then how come they were never paid to just hang out? How come they weren't just paid to come to the white party? How come they weren't invited to church or invited to the Grammys with him? They were only paid to come to a hotel. Why are you paid to come to a hotel at 1 o'clock in the morning? I'll wait. It wasn't to clean the hotel up. That's what it was. That's what it was not for. Oh, also regarding the state lines, what's interesting is the prosecution for state lines. You have to also show that it impacted commerce across the states. Y'all, oddly enough, that's how come the baby oil is also very relevant. The baby oil shows just how perverse, how comprehensive, how frequently the baby oil and the Astro Lube, these things happen. But it's also a product that was purchased in one state, used in another state. So the government literally cited that. Oh, now, okay, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to give you a few final thoughts, my prediction. And y'all, Mark was on 10. Let me tell you something. No. What Mark did, he got in big trouble with the judge 3 times for saying unethical things while the jury was on the stand. Hang on. It says, hold on. Is everyone lying but Diddy? What a mess. Thank you, JJ, for the super chat. And we got another one. Pretty Kitty, thank you for your work. Thank you so much. And there's another one here too. I want you guys got to hear this. You guys have to hear how he got in trouble. You need to. Oh, Crime Watch. Thank you so much for the super sticker. All right. So Mark made this argument. When he made it, I yelled. He began arguing that the government targeted Diddy. You can't do that. Not only can you not do that, so that is so critical. And he knows you can't do that because he actually filed for a prosecutorial misconduct and a mistrial when the prosecutor just alluded to the fingerprints going missing for the arson of Kid Cudi's house, those fingerprints going missing, and claiming that that was an unusual circumstance, right? He filed a motion for a mistrial claiming the implication was that Diddy made it go away. In other words, that Diddy was crooked, that Diddy had something to do with it. Well, for you to say the government targeted Diddy, that means you're claiming that the government is crooked. And you cannot do that as a lawyer. But here's the bigger T. While both sides had agreed, so usually, especially in state court, you can object during closing arguments, but it should be done very, very rarely because there's like a momentum. So if you watch the A$AP Rocky trial or anything like that, you would have seen that there were some objections in closing. Here, though, both sides agreed they would not object during closing. It was actually Mark that proposed that. Mark, the defense attorney, proposed, hey, no objections while we're trying to close. Any objections, save it until after we're done and the jury's out of the room. Well, what that did is that meant he was able to say all the improper things, and I'm going to give you all of them. He said all the improper things that he wanted to in closing, and then they were not able to admonish the jury because the jury was already gone. So now it's going to be in the back of the jury's mind all weekend, and come Monday, the judge is going to have to either add a specific jury instruction or to the jury charges, and or also verbally add it to the jury charges. Because number one, what he did was wrong is he said the government targeted Diddy. In other words, claiming that this was a meritless case from the beginning. The government doesn't target anyone. This is what we're supposed to believe under the law. But then here was the one that got me. Oh boy. The defense in closing specifically said, hey, how come Diddy is the only one charged here? This isn't RICO. Diddy is the only one charged. There's no co-conspirators. No one else was charged with him. You can't do that. That is so unlawful. That is so unethical and improper. I won't say unethical. I won't go that far. But it is so improper under the law. And here's why. The government can choose to try together whoever it wants or not try them together. Further, if the co-conspirators are sealed defendants, they're supposed to stay sealed until their arrest. So it doesn't mean the government hasn't charged anyone else. It just means they're not in this trial. And because legally, nothing under the law says the government has to try people together, that is totally inappropriate. It says, Fran Johnson, he will work. They did target him, allegedly, of course. Even if they did, you cannot make that argument. And of course, the problem is you can't unring the bell. Once the jury hears it, now it's the weekend, they're going to go home thinking, yeah, why aren't there any co-conspirators? Well, that's where you got to hope that these jurors are going to actually read the instructions. The jury instructions should now be updated to say you don't have to have co-conspirators charged. You're going to have to do that to fix this improper behavior, this improper statement that was made by the defense. He knew it, but here's the thing, y'all. There's no way to appeal a not guilty. If he is found not guilty, or even a mistrial, you can't appeal it. With a mistrial, you can just retry him. So in other words, it's like, he's like, I don't care. I'm going to break all these rules. I'm going to do what I need to do to get a win. I'll get the win first. I'll deal with it, the impact later. Because literally, there's nothing that could be done. Because think about it. The government's not even going to ask for a mistrial, because that would mean they have to start all over. And there's the cost to the citizens and all that. Also, and Mims was in the courtroom. Mims taught me that you got to watch his recap. Mims doesn't make it make sense. So he was talking about how when Mark was giving his closing, he really focused on this one black female juror, appears to be in her 40s, who was very actively nodding and smiling. That juror is definitely on Team Diddy. And for example, she was nodding and smiling. She even found him funny. He made a statement, though, apparently about how sexy Cassie was. That weirded everybody else. When he made that statement, she stopped smiling. But then he said something about how handsome Michael B. Jordan was, and she started smiling again. Well, those are the jurors that just might do the jury nullification I referenced earlier, which means they see the rules, they know the rules, they don't care, they're not going to follow the rules, right? But I told y'all, y'all know my legal predictions be right. I told y'all from the beginning, the defense, there's 8 men, 4 women on the jury that are the actual jurors, not alternates. And the defense has only 4 women on the jury. I said from the beginning, the defense should try to get as many women on that jury as possible. And that's because historically, women are far less likely to find a man guilty for assault on a woman. They are less likely to find guilty. And I don't know if it's because we are more critical of a woman's behavior, but this was the same woman, I believe, that was saying she's lying, that mouth she's lying about one of the witnesses, Mia or someone like that. So I say that to say, it does not surprise me that this female juror is eating out of Mark's hands. Oh, and also, he definitely tried to vilify the prosecution. He said, he was not supposed to say this, that the hotel incident was only a misdemeanor. You can't, first of all, that's not something put in evidence. Attorneys are not allowed to testify. And the fact that it's a misdemeanor, or even if it's a felony, because it is a felony, you can't say that it's a misdemeanor because of what's that going to, do in the mind of the jurors? Number one, make them feel, oh, maybe Diddy was targeted. And number two, it would make jurors feel that like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. And it's not true at all. So the judge admonished him. He said that was wrong for him to do that. He also said that it was a misdemeanor and that it was not RICO. He also said that arson and bribery, that he was charged with arson and bribery, but Diddy was not. Those are underlying RICO offenses, right? So Mark made a number of misstatements of the law. It appears they were likely intentional, including asking the government, like I said, why he was charged individually. He also said that Mark used the excuse in the narrative of with the prostitutes that it's like engaging a porn star, and that the prostitutes were paid for time, and that it was like engaging a porn star. So I have actually seen in the comments where a number of people say, well, why is porn legal? It's not. Listen, the whole difference is like porn companies have to be licensed, they have to have contracts, they have to have testing. It is an industry. Just because you're a millionaire, you don't get to decide that you want to run a rogue porn company out of a freak off of your hotel or your girlfriend's hotel room. Thank you so much for these super chats, y'all. I want to make sure I'm answering questions. Was it for the government to trump up charges to the grand jury? Was it fair to leak the elevator footage? Was it fair to call him guilty when he's not? Let me make sure I want to put this on the screen so people can see the question. Because the issue is, if we're talking about fairness, I see what you're saying. Let's go ahead. Put this on. All right. So Conbury is saying, was it fair for the government to trump up charges to the grand jury? Was it fair to leak the elevator? So first of all, trump up charges. I just want to speak to that. I think that's a misnomer, and it's incorrect, because with RICO, all of those are underlying offenses that can be used to find that he was fixing things. I think people agree. For example, when there was the criminal case with Shine, and he and Shine were charged with shooting that woman in the face, right? Many people believe he did that and got away with it. Then there were other offenses. There was some shooting at his studio, and no one was charged with that. There was him beating up his son's coach at UCLA, and he got away with that. There have been a plethora of things over the years that he's gotten away with. So I don't think this is trumping him up, because it was one count. RICO was one count. They could have separately charged certain things. No, but let me be clear. The kidnapping and the arson could have still, I'm sorry, the kidnapping and the S trafficking could have still been charged. But for most of the other offenses, the statute of limitation has expired. So that is true. But they expired on the hotel beatdown because he deliberately made the video go away. So, and then was it fair to leak the elevator footage? I don't know who leaked that. Was it, I actually think it was one of the workers at the hotel who leaked the elevator footage. Excuse me. And was it fair to call him guilty when he's presumed innocent? Also, Symone, thanks for the coverage. Got it. Well, as far as calling him guilty, people have asked me what I thought, and I've said I think he's guilty of some of the stuff. So, yes, my opinion. I'm going to give it, but thank you so much for the super chat. It says, JP says, hey, listen, Mark got it off. Yes, and that's why he is getting paid the big bucks. The case isn't without merit at all, but S trafficking was a stretch. RICO was a done deal. Agreed. But after today, not so sure. Good job, Mark. Listen, with the RICO, here's the thing, though. Remember, RICO, we've been saying, oh, you just need 2 underlying offenses. Let me clarify, honey. No, you only need 2 of the underlying offenses, or you can have 1 underlying offense that happened more than once. You can have 1 that happened twice. So if they can show that the substance distribution happened more than once, and it did, if they can show that the prostitutes across state lines happened more than once, and it did, or the bribery, we know that was at least once, but it appears there were different people that were bribed, but still, the bribery was at least once. That RICO is proven. The only thing that would get him out of RICO is if there is a juror that feels, like we said there, the government targeted him, and that they're just saying, I ain't gonna find him guilty. And it says, I think Jane's house was because they were spending so much in the hotel damage. Plus, Jane had a child, and that probably made it easier and less babysitters. I agree too. Plus, he wanted the privacy. Jane's house worked well because he got more privacy by doing it at Jane's. Oh, and the other thing that Mark said is, wait a minute. Mark said this. Mark goes, well, you know who her baby daddy is. Now, Mark, that is so inappropriate. But what he was getting at there is, given who her baby daddy is, she shouldn't be coerced financially by this little allowance from Diddy. So he says, well, you know who her baby daddy is, and states that Diddy did more for her and her kid than even the baby daddy. I know Diddy told him to say that. And I know, ooh, that's going to piss 50 off. Oops, sorry. I don't know. It's going to piss him off. I don't know. And so it says, it says, insinuating the government is doing something wrong or improper. Yep. Talking a birthday. Okay, next up. Jane had a child. Yeah. Okay, next. Thank you for that super chat. And then I got the next one. Then we've got, I think Jane's house was because, okay, we got that. We all know Diddy has a big ego. Thank you for the super chat. How did they convince him not to take the stand? I think because he felt, great question. I think because Diddy felt that that the defense was doing such a good job. Also, you got to remember, if you take the stand, you can't just take the stand in your main case. You also have to take the stand and get cross-examined. That man is not going to do good in cross-examination. I don't know if it was a deposition or something that he's done in the past, where Howard Stern, who was friends with him, said he does horrible on cross-examination, and that would be suicide, unaliving. That would be horrible for him, especially because when you're winning, you just want to sit down and shut up. All right. Oh, I listen to you sometimes. Thank you, Chastity Phillips. I listen to you on Diddy in the morning. I love listening to you. Thank you so much. All right, what else do we got? Pretty Kitty. I got out all you guys. All right, what else? Let me make sure I got answered all the questions. All right. Ooh. Wait a minute. There we go. Get that live. Is he winning? 15 years with parole, someone is saying. All right, so here's my prediction. My prediction is this. Assuming the jurors actually follow the rules, right? That we don't have one rogue juror who's just like, I'm just not going to find Diddy guilty. That's possible. Looking at those faces, I would not be surprised if there's at least one who's just like, nope, this is a target, that they're going to take in all of the things that Mark said and wasn't supposed to, say that they've targeted him, X, Y, Z. But I think he's going to be found guilty of RICO and prostitution. That prostitution across state lines was just real simple. And I think that it could be a mistrial on the S trafficking. Well, not guilty for Jane, but for Cassie, either a mistrial or guilty. Because remember, you only need one instance where Cassie didn't want to do a freak off. And that instance, without doubt, is that hotel night where she was beaten and dragged. Did the defense finish today? Yes, defense finished. And rebuttal, they cleaned it up. Rebuttal, basically, Comey brought it on home. Comey said, use your common sense. They were not being paid for their time. The bribery was not for to make bad press go away. Because if that was the case, if that was the case, they wouldn't have also told him, hey, don't make any major purchases to bring any attention. And then it says 10 years, served 5. Never should have spent all that time on the baby oil. I think, now I'll say this, that judge is super, super reasonable. So for example, if he's only found guilty of the prostitution, I don't see that judge giving him more than 2 to 5 years. The judge is not going to give him a full 10. I don't think that judge will give him a full 10. That judge is super, super reasonable. You don't see a RICO? Okay, well, I don't know how to tell you. The RICO is there. And again, the RICO are the co-workers. Oh, they did a really, really good job as well. The prosecution did a good job of establishing the co-conspirators. They used the words. They said the co-conspirators were KK, were D-Rock. KK cleaned up the hotel rooms. They talked about D-Rock. After he beat on Cassie real bad, D-Rock went and got her. One of the security guards, got her, put her in a hotel, made her stay there until her bruises went away. They talked about all the different, getting the substances. So, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Rochelle, oh, I really appreciate this. Okay. Oh, it says, thank you for all your energy to cover the trial. I only trust you and Mim's commentary and insight. Thank you so much, Rochelle. So I definitely feel that if the jurors are going to follow the rules, there's going to be at least 2. I still think it should be a guilty for Cassie as well for the trafficking, due to the fact that only needs to be one where she didn't want to do it, and she could have consented all the other times. That really spoke to me on that one. What do I believe his guidelines will be if guilty of those things? Ooh, good question. I don't even know. I just know that the minimum The minimum is 15 years if he's found guilty of all of them. And by all of them, it just needs to be one. Oh, the other thing that's important to note is it does need to be unanimous on trafficking for each woman, but the jury does not have to unanimously agree what the incident was they didn't agree to. They don't unanimously have to agree of whether it was coercion, force, or fraud. So, for example, with Jane, some people could believe it was coercion for him to have the issues with paying her rent. And someone else could say, no, that wasn't the coercion, but he fraudulently induced her to keep doing freak offs by lying to her about the quality time. Or that the fight, okay, because remember the fight that I call mutual combat, they said that was force for Jane. The reason they said that, they clarified. This makes more sense. So Jane's story don't look so ridiculous anymore. With Jane, they said it wasn't just a mutual combat. It was the fact that after he made her have the freak off. So if he had not made her have the freak off after, they're claiming that it wouldn't necessarily have been trafficking, but that was an incident of trafficking as a result. So I don't know the guidelines, but I know this case is a whole hot mess. Did I miss any other questions? No, I think I got them, guys. Let me hit that subscribe. Let's see if we can get us to 80K by the end of this trial. I will be back on Monday giving you some additional coverage. I really think that Monday, the judge is going to read the instructions to the jury. I think they're 30 or 40 pages, y'all. It's going to have the law. And it's going to have the information they need below it. And then they're going to have to apply the facts and complete that jury verdict form. Oh, my gosh. MD gifted 5 memberships. Thank you so much. If you get one of those memberships, y'all say thank you to MD. Those memberships are just, it's arbitrarily assigned. But thank you, MD. And, oh my gosh, Viva Woodlife. Oh my gosh. You guys are so good to me. I really appreciate this. Lord knows I need the money. This is an expensive place. It says, what? Hey there, have a good night. Wait. It says, apparently Fahim was in the courtroom today. Well, they talked about him yesterday, dead in his face. And they talked about how he was a co-conspirator for the substances. Remember, only two, if there's 2 instances of the substance distribution, RICO is done. RICO is proven. Also, there's no minimum amount for substance distribution. So how they're sitting up there talking about, oh, it's personal use. There's no such thing under the law. And substance distribution, drug distribution, is just sharing it with your friends. It's literally sharing it with your friends. That's the law. I don't make the law, but that is the law. Oh, man. So Fahim was here. And then we got, Viva. You'll need a good wine down. I do, with the strong drinks and good music after giving the culture what it needs with your excellent coverage. At 50-15 after all that. That's my favorite bar. First round is on me. Thank you, Viva. Thank you so much. Oh, my gosh. I'm so grateful. And then did I miss any other questions? No, I think I got it all. Okay, guys. I am now, okay, we've been in 34 minutes. Great. Hit that subscribe, hit that like, share this, Facebook or wherever else. Y'all have a good one. I'm going to go get some rest. Bye-bye.